Back to the Future, the animated series, Episode 1, Brothers. So this is an interesting little adventure I'm about to go on, going into, I think it's like 26 or so episodes of the Back to the Future animated series. I've been excited to do this for a little while, and I'm finally getting into it. I was finally able to do it. I think I actually did it yesterday. Yeah, I did it yesterday. I just didn't have a chance to actually do this review. But I'm glad to finally be starting this. And it was actually an entertaining first episode. It's really odd because it's like, of course it has all these weird cheesy elements of like old cartoons, or in general cartoons based off of something that was a movie. It always leads to some weird stuff, because it'll be like, here's this movie that was super realistic in certain elements at least, and then here's the animated version of that, which takes it to the extreme, including making Einstein basically like Scooby-Doo. Like, he does some stuff in this, and I'll of course get to all of that, but it was actually a pretty decent first episode. You know, it starts off actually instantly with the opening theme, which is actually back in time, but it's like an altered version. It's not Huey Lewis singing it, but it's actually still pretty good. They actually add a couple of little strums in there on the guitar, and they alter it a little bit, probably because that way they don't have to pay for it every episode. But I was like, this is actually a nice little alteration to the theme. I already love the song, and I don't find this to be a crappy alteration. I was like, I still think that song's better, but I was like, I like this. The instruments that they add to it, like the little extra background instruments, I'm like, that actually adds some good stuff to the song that sounds pretty cool to me. So the way it kicks off is they actually have Doc getting into the DeLorean. He goes to get Marty from 2015, so they basically show off like the second and third movie. So he gets Marty from 2015, then he goes back, they both go back to 1885, then they pick up Clara, and they show like Mad Dog Tannen and stuff, and then they go back to the prehistoric age, and that's where Clara and Doc's kids are, Jules and Vern. And so they're doing some little thing on a dinosaur or whatever. And so they pick up the boys, and then they get back to their house, and it's like, oh crap, we left Einstein somewhere. So it was pretty interesting. I was like, alright, this is kind of cool. They show all the characters, from the film, and this goes into it. I would say that this probably takes place like 2 or 3 years after the final film, because there's a line in here where Marty actually mentions, if I fail this test, I'm not going to be able to stay in college. He was like, Strickland will kick me out of college, which I thought was a super weird line. It was like his high school principal became like his teacher in college. It was such a weird line to me, because I'm like, Marty was definitely in high school. He was not a college student, so it was really weird. It was like, why is Strickland his like college professor or whatever? So it was really weird, but I was like, okay, this shows that there's a clear distinction. Like, it's a couple years later, plus the boys are both older, you can tell. So I thought that was pretty interesting. There's a lot of lore out there now about Back to the Future after the actual films, because there's currently the comic books, which are canon. I still need to catch up on that, but where I'm at right now, I think is on like issue 3 or 4, takes place in between scenes of the third movie, because it's actually Doc as he's building the train to get to the end of the third film. So I thought that was a cool way to do that. So this takes place after that. I just recently finished a Let's Play for the Telltale Games Back to the Future game, which I would personally say took place before this. Like, if you could technically count all of that stuff as canon, it's kind of interesting. You can do like the movies, and then some of the comics, because some of the stories are actually within the time frame of the third film. Then you can do the actual game. After they take off into the third movie, there's a whole thing with the game where they've been gone for a super long time. They were gone for like 6 months, and then things kind of change as you play along. So I was like, this is cool. Like, if all that stuff counts, if you want to be a super nerd like me and put it into a timeline, this would be like the end of that timeline. Like, all these stories, I would assume, I haven't read everything from the comics recently, but all of this could take place after everything in the comics that I've seen so far, as well as the Telltale games, because the boys are older. Doc's doing his thing. He's doing random science experiments and stuff, is Doc. But they have like a farmhouse and stuff, and this episode, it actually starts off with Christopher Lloyd. We get like, after the intro, which I thought was weird. I thought it would actually start with Christopher Lloyd, because it's a live action thing. And that was one of the things that had me super excited to finally start the series. I was like, every episode has a live action portion with Christopher Lloyd, like the actual Doc Brown. The cartoon Doc Brown is played by Homer Simpson, by the way, Dan Castellaneta. As soon as I heard his voice, I was like, that's definitely Homer. So that's kind of awesome. Every time I hear him, like, Homer is also Doc Brown. So that's kind of funny. But after the intro kicks in, we actually have, Doc doing like a live action segment. They make a funny joke about people doing like stuff on camera. He was like, set focus to like 3.35 meters or something, which is the normal like range or something like that for a talk show host or something. I was like, it was a silly little joke, but I actually appreciated it. And so he goes into like this little experiment that he's doing. Is like, oh, of course, you know, like everything that has a live action portion, it's like, oh, it reminds me of this time. And then he shows a picture, and the picture fades from an actual picture in the book to the animated version, and then that's where it goes into the story, which is actually about both Jules and Vern, which is why the first episode is called Brothers. I was surprised. One of the big things that bugged me about this episode, with it being the first one, everyone should have been in it, at least in some regard, but Clara does not show up at all in the first episode outside of the promo, and I was like, that's so weird. Like, it's the very first episode, every single character should have been in this, and I thought that was so weird. Like, why not put Claire in there? Even if it's a really minor thing, it's the first episode. Especially with it being about Jules and Vern arguing with each other all the time. And so it comes up where, oh crap, Jules is the older of the two because Jules is the first name, so that's an easy way for me to remember. But Jules is trying to use the computer because he's just like Doc, actually. He's like the super nerdy kid. He's like, I'm trying to do some calculations and stuff. And Vern is like he's more like Marty. And so he's like, you know, I just want to play the game and get my high score. And so Doc is kind of conflicted where he's like, you know, on one hand, Jules is trying to, you know, expand his brain and do scientific computations. And on the other hand, and I love that he used this reasoning for video games, but he was like, on the other hand though, Vern's is increasing his hand-eye coordination, which I thought was awesome that was his reasoning for why he should let his son play video games. And ultimately, he's like, you know, both of you, he does kind of the parent thing where it's like, nobody gets it. And in Vern's eyes, he's like, you always side with Jules, because Jules is super fun. He's like, oh, I'll go outside and I can do other science stuff. And Vern was just like, well, I got nothing to do now. And so he's like, you know, you always kind of side with him, and that's how he felt. So he takes off, because he's got a flying hat, that's like his thing. So he takes off and he flies up, and his whole deal is like, you know, like before that happens, actually, he talks with Marty, and he's like, you know, they always treat me like a little kid, and Marty tries to help him. He's like, yeah, you're my main man. He's like, thanks, Marty, can I borrow your hoverboard? And he's like, get out of here, you're a kid. So he, of course, kind of felt abandoned. That's when he takes the hat up, and so he flies off, and he just feels like crap. And so eventually, he ends up realizing that he can jump into the DeLorean, and so that's what he does. He goes into the DeLorean, which ends up sending him back to the Civil War, because Marty, during his studying, he's listening to music the whole time, and they have, basically it's like a projector, which is also weird. It was like a live action person as like the projector giving him this history lesson, so it was kind of weird seeing her, like she's like this little character in a green screen, obviously. And so like random stuff would happen, and she would react to the real world, like when the DeLorean came like crashing through the wall, she said like hit the deck, and she like jumps off screen. And I was like, that's so weird that would react to that, because I don't know, I guess it's some sort of future tech. It was just really weird. But she's trying to teach Marty, he's just playing the guitar, and so she screams at him because he's not paying attention. So of course she yells out the time, the date and the year of the Civil War. Like it was a specific picture that they were talking about. And this happens to activate the DeLorean because Doc just put in like 2 new features, one of which being voice activation for the time circuits, and the other being like he could fold up the entire DeLorean into like a little briefcase, and it would only activate to his voice and Einstein's bark, which I thought was very interesting. That was an odd choice to me, but those are the 2 people. So when Vern actually ends up in the DeLorean, he takes off, and so this time has already been set because the hologram woman was screaming the year. So he gets sent back to the Civil War. It's like, crap, we have to find our son. They see the picture that Marty was looking at actually changes, and so now Vern is in the past. They take the, I guess the time train. It's a weird phrase, but they take the train back in time. That ends up getting hijacked like instantaneously. Like Doc and Jules get off, and it's like, all right, Marty, you stay here with Einstein. Both of them instantly get hijacked, and the train is taken to the Confederates. So, and that's actually where Vern is. Jules and Doc actually end up with the North. So we have the brothers on opposite sides of this, and of course we have a Tannen for the South, naturally. So that ends up happening. Marty tries to survive. Einstein, I forgot, Einstein was like locked up with him, but of course Vern comes in, ends up saving them both, and then they kind of all end up still going to war, because even though they're saved within that camp, they're still trapped on that side. They're trapped with the Confederates, and so it's like, crap, what in the world do we do? And so when they get into battle, they basically stop it because the brothers are kind of flung together, and they start crying because they get caught literally in between both warring factions, and they hug each other and cry because they think they're about to die. That, as a cartoon, that literally stops war. Everyone stops and they look at them and it's like, oh, that's so cute and stuff, because these 2 boys are hugging and they're brothers. And so they talk about how, each side has to that, like, I'm sure you guys have family members on the other side, and like this other kid who was talking with Vern the whole time, like the drummer boy, he's like, hey, and he like says something to his older cousin, he's like, hey man, and so they all drop their weapons, and everyone kind of hugs it out, and that's good. So the Tannins, or the one time I believe it was Beauregard Tannen, he doesn't end up fighting in war. Turns out that the person that Doc and Jules were with was actually Clara's great uncle, I believe, or something like that. Or I think it was just her uncle, because he had a picture of Clara when she was young. So it's either her uncle or like her great uncle. So Jules tries to talk to him about that and stuff, but of course he does. He's like, she's 9 years old, so he doesn't get that Jules is his son and time travel. But ultimately, the boys end up hugging it out, and it's like they end up stopping this battle where no one ends up dying. And that's pretty much what happens. Another random thing that happens is that both sides decide not to fight each other, but they, for whatever reason, once again, cartoon stuff, they we decided to no longer fight each other, but we will now attack the interlopers, which are, Doc, Marty, Jules, and Vern, and Einstein. So, for whatever reason, they stop fighting in this war for a great cause, because these two boys, and then it's like, now we'll turn on them. And so, of course, that's why everyone takes off. So Einstein gets into the DeLorean, he's driving it, and then he pulls like a lever, and the DeLorean turns into like a limo. So everyone hops into the DeLorean limo. They drive the DeLorean limo into the back of the train, and then they take the train back to the future, which they actually say at the end, like, let's go back to the future. It's like they had to put that in the first episode, maybe every episode. So then they get to the future, and everything's fine. Jules and Vern, for now, have become friends, and it's like, you can use the computer whenever you want, and they bond, and that's the end of the episode. So it was a decent first episode. It actually, after that story ends, we go back to the live action portion of the episode, which is Doc finishing his experiment, and then the robot machine, before he gets into the experiment, is like, for children, they can't do this. And it's like, oh, what am I thinking? So he explains how to do the experiment where you wrap a wire around a screwdriver and turn it into a magnet. And during this portion, we have Bill Nye the Science Guy, which I didn't realize he was in it until I was actually watching it. And I was like, holy crap, there's Bill Nye. So Bill Nye is in it. He doesn't say anything, but he's the one who he basically does hand modeling. Like there'll be pictures and stuff behind him, and he'll be like this as Doc is saying something, and he'll like follow waves, or if something's supposed to electrocute him, he'll like point at the picture and then do like this for that symbol. That is so hot. It's freaking. I hate the summer so much. But I realize like I'm sweating like crazy right now. Like it just dawned on me how many times I've done this. But that's basically how they end the episode. They have Bill Nye, as Doc is explaining things, he does the stuff where he wraps the wire around the screwdriver, put the 2 ends to the battery, and it's like, surprise, the screwdriver can now be a magnet, and of course they pick up some paper clips. And that's pretty much how the episode ends. And I was like, that's really cool. Doc Brown and Bill Nye the Science Guy in one series, so that was just kind of awesome. But it was a good first episode. I'm excited to see where this goes, because I believe it's, like I said, like 26 or something episodes. I think technically it was cut up into 3 seasons. So I'm curious if the theme is going to change, or how that's going to play out. But I'm looking forward to watching the rest of this. It was actually not like, I've seen some old cartoons, like, you go back and you watch some old cartoons, and it's like, that's just horrible, like, everything about it just sucks. It was like, no, they have fairly decent voice acting. Dan Castellaneta is a great voice actor. I could swear the dude that played Marty is the same voice actor for Aladdin. I have to look that up, but I don't think it is, but I'm like, man, he sounds just like the dude from Aladdin to me. It could be. It's not, like, super far off. Like, Aladdin came out in 92, and this is, like, the third movie came out in, like, 91, I believe. Yeah, or 90 or 91. So I'm like, I don't know, it wouldn't be that crazy. So I'm going to have to look it up. But, the voice acting is pretty decent. It wasn't super. The only thing that was really crazy is the way that they did Einstein, where it's like, now Einstein is, like, it's like Wallace and Gromit or something, where Einstein is going around, and he's like, oh, man, you guys are going to get screwed up, so I have to save you. And he does, like, weird stuff, and I'm like, it just seems so off to do that when I feel like they could do it another way. But it's a cartoon, so there's always some extra little thing thrown in, when it comes from live action to animation. And that was the one thing for this, where it's like suddenly Einstein is like driving the car, like actually driving, like he's leaning out the window and he's got his hand on the wheel, all this stuff. So that's like the one super weird thing. Other than that, it's like this fits perfectly. It fits right in with the Back to the Future stuff. Issues where they, one kid goes back in time, is like, crap, we need to take the train and go back in time. Once again, I thought it was weird that Clara didn't show up. I was like, I don't really understand why they didn't have that happen. Like, even if she was there for one portion to tell Doc, like, hey, this is what I think you should do, and then everyone disappears because things get chaotic and they all take the time machines, and for whatever reason she's left behind at random. Something crazy like that. But I just thought it was weird, like they didn't put every single person in the first episode. But definitely a good first episode. Also, it ends with Biff coming in, who is actually played, I can never remember his name, but the actual actor who played Biff does the voice in this, so I thought that was cool. But he comes in and he's like, you know, don't be a butthead. If you want to learn about the Civil War, like go to the library. They did like the full-on old school cartoon PSA thing like at the very end. It's like, you know, go to the library to learn about the Civil War. Also, Marty failed his exam because it was about the Spanish Civil War. So that happened. That was something that shows up in the live action portion after Doc finishes the story. He was like, yeah, he failed because it turns out he was supposed to talk about the Spanish Civil War, not the American Civil War. So he failed. But it was, like I said, a good first episode. Of course, if you happen to have seen it or you just have any random questions about it, because it's crazy, just put your comments down in the comment section below. Not sure how common these reviews are going to be. I'm going to try to make them consistent now that I've officially started. I'm going to try to make sure I, you know, watch, you know, periodically. It should be like a couple of reviews a week, because I'm going to kind of just be going through like an episode a day, if not more than that. Just, you know, kind of to pump them out and actually enjoy the series, you know, really fast. So that's kind of how I plan to put them out. But like I said, if you guys have any comments, please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.